Hey, this is Zach from Good Charities Rescue Rebuild program, and this is the fourth and final video in our Chainlink fencing series. This video series is covering how to install fencing in an animal shelter environment where we do some things differently to make sure that it's safe for the animals, and there are some tricks that our team has learned over the years that we're sharing with you to help you be successful in your Chainlink project. In this video, we're specifically going to cover the gates. Gates are a fairly technical part because they have to be measured right, and there are a lot of steps that go into cutting and assembling those gates. So we are ready to make a gate in this play yard now. We've got an opening here with our two posts. Let's talk a little bit about how we're actually going to measure for this gate. So we need to figure out our height on the gate, and we need to figure out our width on the gate. So when we talk about our height, we're going to want to make sure that we leave enough room top and bottom to have a little bit of extra chain link sticking up and down under the gate, just like we would on our line rails. Typically that ends up being about 1.5 inches above and 1.5 inches below. So on a 6-foot fence at 72 inches, we're going to subtract 3 inches, and every gate that we make is 69 inches tall on the frame. So that one stays the same. On our width, it's going to be different on every single gate. And unfortunately, no matter how hard we try, these posts are almost never going to be perfectly level side to side. And so we actually have to measure the width of the top and the width of the bottom. Before we can actually use those measurements though, we have to know what we need to subtract for our hardware. So we've got a gate latch and we've got our gate hinges. We're gonna use this gate that we've already installed to figure out our distances here between the gate and the post on both the latch and the hinge side. We've calculated this to be 1 7/8 inches on both sides. And so we're gonna combine those numbers to be 3 3/4. And what that means is for every opening, we can measure our rough opening, which is the distance from the post to post on the inside, and then subtract that 3 3/4. So for example, if this measured at 40 inches, we would subtract the 3 3/4 and get to 36 1/4 inches. That tells us our actual dimension of our gate. But for each opening, we need to do that on the top and the bottom. So before we start building gates, we want to take a piece of paper and write down tops and bottoms for every gate that we're going to build. We'll do that to make sure that our math is solid, and if we do have an issue down the road, we can figure out where we went wrong. Now, of course, when you're doing this for the first gate, you're not going to have a gate to use as an easy thing to measure off of. So we're going to take our fittings and we're going to put them together and we're going to measure from one side to the other. We want to do this really carefully and make sure that we're actually measuring to where the post or the gate will be sitting in these fittings. We'll do this for our hinge and also for our latch. Once we've done that, we want to make a single gate before we commit to those measurements and make sure that it fits, because it's very easy to mess up the math here. That is the hardest part about making a gate. Once we subtract our 3 3/4 from our rough opening, we now have the dimension of our actual gate. And now we have to do a little more math. We're not done. We have to figure out what length to cut all of our pieces to build our gate. We talked about how our gate's going to be 69 inches tall. So our two vertical side pieces are going to be 69 inches for every gate we build. So you can go ahead and cut those out of our 1 3/8 line rail. Now, as we assemble our gate, we're going to use something called gate corners. These are stamped gate corners. There's also a cast version that's made out of aluminum. The stamped steel version like this is 100% what you want. The aluminum ones are available at a lot of home improvement stores. They really don't hold up. We see them break all the time. These are typically only available from commercial fencing suppliers or from online. When you use these are designed to be either bolted through or to have self-tapping screws installed. We actually use a welder. We come in each of these holes and we weld the metal together. That's not necessary, but we like it because it's a really strong, sturdy gate. When we look at these gate corners, they make a top and a bottom. The only difference is the top has this little cap that keeps water from getting in our gate. The bottom is the same exact piece without that cap. So once we've cut our 69-inch pieces, I'm just going to use this scrap as an example, we would slide this all the way in, and that piece comes all the way up to the very top of our gate. And then the pieces that connect the gate's top and bottom slide in like that. And the reason that's important is because this piece has to be shorter than the total width of your gate. The amount that it's shorter is the width of this tubing times 2. This is 1 3/8 tubing. So 1 3/8 plus 1 3/8 is 2 3/4. So now we have to add to our notes a new dimension, which is our gate width minus 2 3/4. On our example gate with a 40-inch rough opening, that's going to get us down to 33.5 inches. So that means we're going to go to our saw and we're going to cut this piece to 33.5 inches. While we're doing that, we're going to cut our bottom piece as well, and we're going to label each of these pieces top and bottom so we don't forget. Once we have all those pieces, we're going to find a nice flat surface to work on, ideally a concrete slab, a sidewalk, something like that. If you're welding, that surface needs to be flame resistant, so concrete is perfect. We're going to lay out all these pieces that we've cut, and we're going to measure diagonally to make sure that our gate is square, and we're going to double check that all of our pieces are fully seated into these corners. Once we've done that, we come through with a welder and we weld each of these together. If you don't want to weld, you can drill fully through this and bolt through it, or you can use some large self-tapping screws. I would recommend something like a number 14 screw, and putting a screw in each hole on each side. Once we've done that, we're ready to hang our gate and double check that it fits. Okay, so we've got a gate here that we've built for this opening. It's all welded up and ready to go. We're going to go through the process now of hanging this so that we can kind of see how the hinges and latches are going to go, and we can do a test fit here before we actually put the chain link on. You absolutely want to do this first, because if you put all the chain link on, it's a whole headache to get it all apart and fix it if it doesn't quite fit. So on our latches, we have two sides. We have a side that goes on the post and we have a side that goes on the gate. This has the male end to it, and on the top, this will be pointed down. On the bottom, it will be pointed up. The reason for that is so our gate can't be lifted off the hinges if a dog was really being rough on it. So I'm going to go ahead and hammer these hinges on, and then we'll hang our gate. All right, we've got these on. We had to use a hammer to put it on, and then I used a pair of channel lock pliers to bend together the back while we put that bolt on. So now we're going to move on to our gate, and we're going to install these other sides of the latches that will sit like this onto our gate. We're going to use a hammer to put these on, and we'll get them set roughly in place, and we'll make some finer adjustments in a minute. And then we just ran some screws in, some bolts rather, just to get them in place. Now what we're going to do is get the bottom adjusted to set the height of our gate. In order to do that, what I like to do is lower this so that the top of this is sitting at about the bottom of this one. That's going to be a good starting point to get this gate off the ground. We'll set our gate on that lower one, and now we're going to lower this so that we can mount it on here. Once that's sitting on there, the gate will hold itself, but we'll still go ahead and tighten it on here. All right, so those are our hinges. Everything's working well there. We're going to come over to this side and do our latch now. The way this latch works is that it has two plates that create a collar, and then we have this part that's called the fork. You can buy these in kits for 1 3/8 to 2 3/8. That's going to be your most common size. You can also buy these separately as a collar and a fork. What we're going to do is have a bolt on each side of that collar, and then this fork will be sandwiched on one side. And you can see there's an open hole in the bottom of this. This allows to put a lock or a carabiner or whatever you'd like to keep this from being opened by a dog. So in order to actually install this, we're going to take one of these bolts out, and we're going to put it around, maybe take both of the bolts out. We're going to put it around this other side of the gate opposite the hinges. Doesn't have to be perfect right now. We're just trying to get the bolts started. And just like all the other bolts, we want to keep the nuts on the side away from the animals. All right, so now I've just made a mistake here, but we're going to use this as a valuable lesson. The way this latch goes on here, this actually hits the tension bar on this other panel. And so typically when we hang a gate, we try to have our latch side not come into a corner, and this is why. If you want to come around here, I'll show you the issue with this. There is this little wing on this fork, and you can see it actually hits here and prevents this from closing. Now we could cut this off, and we've done that before, but it doesn't work very well. So what we're actually going to do is reverse everything we just did and put this on the other way. The good news is it looks like our gate is going to be about the right size based on where that latch falls. All right, so we all make mistakes. We got this flipped around and it's working well now. So this fork is now going up and down nice and easily, and we now want to check our spacing here between our fork and our post. We want this to be like a 1/4 inch or less. The tighter the better, but we do want it to be able to move freely. Now we have to decide what height we want this at. So what I've done is I've measured up from the bottom half the height of our gate, 34.5 inches. There's going to be a brace that goes across our gate here, so we want this to be just above that. So I'm going to go ahead and lower this down. Now, one thing to note here is we want to be careful in how we tighten this latch so that the gate cannot move more than about this much. If we don't have this bolt tight enough, there will be a lot of play in this and this gate will not be secure. So you have to play around with tightening and loosening both sides. All right, we've got that in. Now our next step is going to be to install a gate brace across the middle of this. The purpose of that is so that when we put tension on this with our chain link fabric, it does not collapse the sides of the gate. We're going to use a fitting called a gate brace, which is essentially an end rail clamp like we used on some of our line rails on a miniature scale. And so it's an 1 3/8 to 1 3/8 end rail clamp. We will cut a piece to go in between and fasten that in the middle of the gate. Once the gate brace is in, we can go ahead and take the gate down and measure and install our chain link. Our volunteers, Mia and Grace, have been working hard to get all of these gates ready to hang. And what they've done here is they've cut a piece of chain link to fit on here, just like we did for the actual fences. They put tension bars in the same way, but they use these gate clips instead of using tension bands. And now they're going to show us how using a gate clip tool, we can go around and tension this, and then this will be ready to hang. All right, our gate has been strung. The chain link is on here. It is super tight thanks to the gate clip tool. There are 2 steps left at this point. One is wire tying. So just like we did for the fence, we're gonna come in and we're gonna do 2 or 3 wire ties along each one of these horizontal bars. And then finally, we're gonna come in and we're just gonna double check our height. We wanna make sure that the bottom is as close to the ground as it can possibly be, and we'll make any adjustments as needed. We may even have to dig out the dirt underneath to ensure that this can be as tight to the ground as possible. That sums up our 4-part series of how to build a chain link fence for animal shelters. If you stuck around through this whole thing, thank you. This has been a long one, and we really appreciate your support, and we hope that this is helpful for your chain link fencing project. If you need help with your project, whether it's layout, choosing materials, or if some part of this video didn't make sense and you just need some clarification, feel free to comment to this video, or you can email rescuerebuild@greatergood.org, and our team will be happy to assist you with your project. If you haven't yet, make sure you're subscribed to the Greater Good Charities YouTube page so you can see more do-it-yourself videos in the future. Oh my God.
Gotta fit. Zach.
What the heck? I can't get it on, Pat. We're gonna use this. Your face. You just wait. There's gonna be so many cool flips. There's not a single one that's been like this. Just stop.